Again, welcome everybody to today's Satsang. It's wonderful to see all of you today. And as I introduced earlier, a few of you came a little bit later. I'm going to turn this microphone over very shortly to Nayaswami Shivani. And she is from Italy, Assisi, Italy, and has been instrumental in building the work in Italy from the 1980s up until a very successful retreat and community that is now there. All of you are invited, of course, to go sometime. If you go on pilgrimage, go to Italy, and you'll see for yourself the vibrancy of that community. And much of that has been accomplished by a very strong team of core devotees that have been able to build that work from scratch. Shivani also is a founding member of Ananda Village, coming to this work in 1969, met Swamiji at that time and was a very dear disciple, student of Swami, and carries forward his work through outreach, writing, lecturing, traveling, and sharing as she's doing this evening. She's been here this weekend since, I believe, was it Wednesday, Thursday, and has done a series of classes, and will be here for a couple of days longer before she then continues her journey. And I don't know where she goes next, but somebody will be blessed by your presence, I'm sure. So anyway, I'm going to turn this over to Shivani, and she'll share, and then afterwards, I'll share a little bit.
Welcome to you all. It's my honor to be here with you as devotees of our great master. We have the great blessing of being able to be together and to inspire each other with the inspiration coming from our masters. I'd like to point out one of the images on the altar. It's okay. One of the images on the altar, it's right here behind me. And this is the image of Jesus Christ. And in this representation, he has Krishna behind him. Perhaps when you came to the Ananda Sangha temple for the first time and you looked at the altar, perhaps you had this thought, what is he doing there? Okay. Well, I'll tell you that the same thing happens in Europe. When people come to the Ananda temples in Assisi and elsewhere in our centers throughout Europe, they look at the altar and they say, what are these other guys doing there? So this evening, we'd like to talk about that and to help us understand why Jesus is on this altar and why the other masters are on there as well. It started, our story of this path of self-realization started a long time ago, and there's not been a year put to this particular event. But it happened high in the Himalayas, and I would like to read to you the words of Swami Ananda about this faithful meeting that happened. And this is from his writing called The Festival of Light, which some of you might be familiar with. In this festival, which is celebrated every Sunday in Ananda centers throughout Europe and throughout the United States, and celebrated here in India on occasion, you'll find these words. High in the Himalaya, eyes filled with divine love, Jesus appeared to the great Master Babaji. The lights on the high altar of my church, Jesus said, have been growing dim, though still lit on lower altars of good works. The noble tabor of inner communion with the Lord burns low and is ill attended. Let us together, united in Christ's love, set lights ablaze on that high altar once again. Now, this was a very important and an historic meeting where the great avatar and guardian of the Western world, Jesus Christ, came to Babaji in Babaji's home high in the Himalayan mountains. Babaji, an incarnation of Sri Krishna, being the avatar and guardian of the Eastern world and especially of Hindustan. And they had this conversation in which Jesus was the protagonist. It is Jesus who called the meeting. You know, they probably didn't need telephones then, but you know, if they did, you know, ring, ring, Babaji, this is Jesus calling. I think we need to meet. Where's a good place? Oh, why don't you come to my country and let's meet in the mountains? Okay, Babaji, I'll do that. And so they met together. Now, Jesus called that meeting because he had a specific request. Jesus said that his disciples, through the ages, through the centuries, had forgotten the true meaning of his teachings, which he called inner communion. Communion meaning yoga, to bring together in an inward way. And he says to Babaji, my disciples have forgotten how to contact me, the Christ consciousness, inside themselves. They've been doing charitable works, and this is a good thing, but inner communion has been getting forgotten. It's been all but forgotten. Can we work together, East and West, to light that candle again on the altars in all hearts? So Babaji agrees, and a plan is born whereby the science of inner communion, which we call the science of self-realization, is nourished in India and passed down from one great avatar to another through several generations. Now I'd like to describe to you another meeting that took place sometime later. And those of you who have read the autobiography, you might remember this meeting, which is when Babaji went to the Kumbh Mela, the Maha Kumbh Mela, probably in Allahabad. And vibrationally, he called to him a disciple whom he had yet to meet. And this disciple's name was Priyanath Karar. Do you know who he is? Priyanath Karar? Okay, he becomes Swami Sri Yukteswarji. Okay. And Priyanath is roaming around the Kumbh Mela thinking about how many false teachers there are, how few there are, even at Kumbh Mela, who know God inside themselves. And he's having these thoughts, kind of judgmental thoughts. And a young man comes to him and says, Swami, my master is calling you. Please come with me. And Priyanath says, I'm not a Swami, but I'll come with you. And so he goes and he meets Babaji. And they have this conversation. Babaji tells him, East and West must establish a golden middle path of activity and spirituality combined. India has much to learn from the West in material development. In return, India can teach the universal methods by which the West will be able to base its religious beliefs on the unshakable foundations of yogic science. You, Swamiji, have a part to play in the coming harmonious exchange between Orient and Occident. Some years hence, I shall send you a disciple whom you can train to disseminate yoga in the West. The vibrations there of many spiritually seeking souls come flood-like to me. I perceive potential saints in America and Europe waiting to be awakened. So Babaji is passing the commission that Jesus has given to him, to awaken the inner communion in souls in the West. He passes that on to Priyanath Karar, and he gives him another commission. Will you not write a short book on the underlying basic unity between Christian and Hindu scriptures? Show by parallel references that the inspired sons of God have spoken the same truths, now obscured by men's sectarian differences. So Priyanath, who becomes Swami Sri Yukteswarji, accepts this commission, and he writes the short book, which he calls, he does not, which he calls Kaivalya Darshana. It was written in Bengali, and the original title of this book is The Vision of the Absolute, the Darshana of Kaivalya, the absolute reality, which in its English translation becomes known as the Holy Science. Now, in this book, Sri Yukteswar draws from some of the Indian scriptures, especially some of the Upanishads and others, and he draws from some of the Christian scriptures, especially the Gospel of St. John and the Book of Revelations, also written by St. John. Yogananda has affirmed that St. John, one of the four Gospelists, meaning those who wrote the words and the teachings of Jesus, they are called the Gospel, meaning the good news. And there were four of the main direct disciples, known as apostles of Jesus, who wrote these down. Actually, they were not all direct disciples. John was a direct disciple. Matthew was a direct disciple. And the two other Gospels were written by disciples of disciples, the Gospel of Mark and the Gospel of Luke. So these are the four Gospels. And Swami Sri Yukteswar chose John's writings because John understood that Jesus was an incarnation of the Absolute Spirit, that he was a son of that Spirit. And John's writings are very mystical. All of the other Gospels, the other three, start more or less with the birth of Jesus. And you probably know that story, and it gets told here and around the world at the time of the Nativity, at the time of the birth of Christ, which is celebrated on December. Whether or not Christ was actually born in December is up to debate, but that's not for us to discuss here. So, the other Gospels, they talk about Jesus is born, about his mother, about his father, about the miracles attendant upon his birth, about his youth, and many other stories. But John's Gospel is different, and it starts in this way. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word was made flesh and dwelt among us. So John places the advent, the coming of Jesus as an incarnation of the Word, of the Holy Spirit, of the cosmic vibration of Om. And John says that in the beginning, there wasn't Jesus. In the beginning, there was Om. And Jesus Christ is an expression of the Word. So Sri Yukteswar takes this passage and other passages. Let me quote one from Revelation. Let me tell you what Revelation is. The disciples, after the passing of Jesus, they all spread out and disseminate his teachings. One of those disciples comes to India. Who is it?
Thomas.
St. Thomas. Right after the lifetime of Jesus. And St. Thomas travels, some say by boat, some say overland, coming down, and goes to the south and establishes churches, first in Kerala, then goes to Tamil Nadu, establishes a large work in Chennai, and dies, is martyred in Chennai. And his tomb, allegedly, is in the Church of St. Thomas at Chennai. Other disciples went to other countries. St. Andrew went to Greece. St. James went to Spain. St. John didn't go anywhere. St. John went into seclusion in a cave on the island, I believe, of Patmos in Greece. And he meditated there, and truths were revealed to him through the depth of his meditation. And he wrote those truths in a book which in English is called Revelations. And that's really, I feel, the proper name. For some reason, in Italy, they call that book the Apocalypse. Taking kind of the wrong, missing the point, taking the wrong message about the end of days. But this book is Revelations, and it's all about his own experience from inner communion. And one of the early passages, I believe from the very first chapter of Revelations, says, "All those who received him, to them gave he the power to become the sons of God, and they shall go out no more." This is a very mystic saying. So to all who receive God through his incarnations, through his avatars, will be given power to themselves become the sons of God. So there is not one son of God. We are all sons and daughters of God. This teaching is lost through the centuries of Christianity, in the dogma that Jesus is the only Son of God. Now, as Master said, ignorance is 50-50. And so who is the only avatar? It's Krishna, right? Or is it Rama? Or who is the highest God? Is it Shiva? Is it Vishnu? And so forth. So these incarnations come to remind us of the truth that these liberated souls come to bring to us. So here we have Jesus passing a mission to Babaji, Babaji giving the baton to Swami Sri Yukteswar, says, write a book and show how the scriptures of East and West are saying the same thing. One of the statements in the Gospel of St. John, as well as in another Gospel, I believe of Matthew or Mark, says this: The eye is the lantern of the body. If your eye be single, your whole body will be filled with light. Okay. Christians have no idea what to make of this. What are you talking about if your eye is single? And modern commentaries translate that to be, if your eyes are healthy. All right. So we need for realized and liberated masters to interpret the writings of other realized and liberated masters. So Swami Sri Yukteswar did that. I encourage you to read the Holy Scripture with that in mind, that was the purpose of Swami Sri Yukteswarji, was to begin to demonstrate that truth is one and eternal, and we are to realize that one truth within our own selves. So Babaji, in this same conversation, continues by saying, in the future, I will send you a disciple whom you can train to bring a bridge between East and West to the Western world. And that disciple is our master, Paramhansa Yoganandaji. So the fateful meeting between Yogananda and his guru, Swami Sri Yukteswar, after many years of childhood searching for his master, happens in the city of Benares, when Yogananda looks down the narrow lane and sees a figure, an image, a figure, a person whom he had seen in his mind, in his dreams, in his meditations very often. And so this third meeting happens. And Yogananda spends 10 years in the ashram of his guru, being trained in the truths and studying the Bible, the Christian Bible, and the Bhagavad Gita. Okay? And his mission, as he understands it, is this. This is what Yogananda writes, that I have come to the West to establish by a scientific system of realization the absolute basic harmony and oneness of Christianity, Hindu yoga teachings, and all true religions. So Yogananda becomes the bridge. And we see in the simple name he chose that he understood his mission. I mean, he could have chosen, any name, Purushottam Ananda, but he chose the very common name, Yogananda. Joy and bliss through bringing together. That was his mission. And this has been given to us as our inheritance. To be able to study, to understand, to discover within ourselves, there's no difference, East, West, one true religion from another true religion. The truth is truth. And as it says in the Psalms of David, know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. It is the truth that has power, not religion, not institutions, not dogma, not even traditions. It is the truth that the avatars come to impart to us. And now it's our part to open ourselves to the truth, to accept truth wherever we see it, from whatever religion. There is truth in Quran. There is truth in Guru Granth Sahib. There is truth in Bhagavad Gita. There is truth in Revelations. There is truth in the Gospels. The truth in all of these scriptures is rarely understood. And so the masters come, the great gurus, and they help us to make those truths alive within us. Yogananda began to fulfill his mission by writing spiritual interpretations of both the Christian Bible and the Bhagavad Gita simultaneously. And starting, I believe, in the year 1932, every month he published an interpretation, the one he called the Second Coming of Christ, not of Jesus. Master always referred to Jesus as his title, the Christ. It's not that Jesus, had a first name and a second name, Jesus Christ, family name. No, it was Jesus the Christ. What does Christ mean? It means the anointed one. Anointed means to, in English, vuol dire di essere unto dall'olio. Okay, it means to be bathed in oil. Okay? And oil is symbolic of the superconsciousness. So it's Jesus who is bathed in superconsciousness, which Yogananda calls Christ consciousness. So the second coming of Christ, which, by the way, is a dogma that Christians are waiting for. You know the avatars of Vishnu, right? It starts with, what's his name? Vama? Okay, and it goes on and on and on and on. And then we have Krishna. And who are we waiting for? Kalki. Okay, and we're waiting, right? He hasn't come yet. Okay. Well, the Jewish people are also waiting for the promised Messiah. Okay, Jesus came, didn't recognize him, so they're waiting and they're waiting. So the Christians, they got Jesus, but when he left, when he died, he promised that he would come again. And so they believe in the second coming of Christ for all of the good little Christians. If they're really, really good, then they can be there when Jesus comes again to free them from mortal bondage. But Master gave another interpretation to the second coming of Christ. He says the second coming of Christ is within our consciousness when we realize the Christ within us. Christ who is one with the immanent presence of Spirit at the heart of every atom of creation. Christ consciousness is pulsating in this whole universe. It's pulsating and speaking and guiding and teaching every one of us. This is the second coming. This is Christ realization. So Yogananda writes the second coming of Christ and the interpretations of Bhagavad Gita, the deep meanings of the teachings of Krishna, month after month after month. And this is the heritage that he has given us. We need to be expressions of the bridge, of the understanding that truth is truth, and that all people, no matter what they profess, be it a religion, be it an opinion, be it a political stance, be it a scientific theory, no matter what people profess, that under it all there is the one ocean of truth. So we have this wonderful heritage, and we can look to each of our masters and thank each one of them, from Babaji to Lihiri Mahashaya to Sri Yukteswar to Guruji, and thank them for giving to us this high teaching and the tools to realize who we truly are, sons and daughters of God, yogi Christs, as Master was originally going to call his autobiography. Thank you, Divine Gurus. And I turn this over to Jayaji.
Thank you, Shivani. That was marvelous. And what more can be added to that, I do not know. But but I would like to offer a few thoughts, and complementary to what Shivani has shared already, and so well spoken. I'd like to start by, what we're speaking about this week is Master's mission. Master came, the unification, East and West, bringing harmony between these two ancient traditions, religious traditions, showing the underlying unity. And the reason was for this is that we have entered a new age, and I know we've all, if we understand these teachings, how the masters have said that we have exited the tradition of Kali Yuga and entered into now Dwapara Yuga. And it's a momentous time. It's a time of great change. It's a time of great opportunity. And it's a time when I think there are moments in time when the window of opportunity open for souls to pass through into make tremendous spiritual progress. And I think that is a time right now for all of us. Swami Kriyananda liked to use the word, and perhaps even Master used this word, it's a time for a new dispensation, a special time in history when something momentous is taking place. And that's how we might look at this work of self-realization, look at the message that Paramahansa Yogananda brought. It's not just another great saint of a lineage of dozens of great saints that always come again and again. They're special moments. Now you could say every disciple looks at his guru as being special, but I do believe this is really the case, with which we're fortunate to be students of and participants in. I'd like to begin with a little bit something that Swamiji wrote that Master had said. This is in Conversations with Yogananda, and he's recording something that he was speaking with Master. He then spoke of the larger picture. This is Swami saying Master then spoke of the larger picture. Because in the divine plan, materialism was intended to be manifested in the West, and spirituality in the East. Krishna came first to teach the fundamental principles of spirituality. Later, Jesus Christ was sent to the West. The Eastern is the more ancient of the two civilizations. It was therefore right for the West's development to follow that of the East. Material realities come after the spiritual. The teachings which God is sending now through this work provide a balance between East and West, between Eastern spirituality, that is India in particular, and Western material efficiency, that of America especially. Now, he explained that his mission was as given to him by Babaji, was to show the underlying unity of the Eastern Hindu tradition as expressed through the Bhagavad Gita by Lord Krishna and the Western tradition of the teachings of Jesus Christ as expressed in the Bible, the underlying essence that unified them, and also, you could say, he went on to say, unifies all true religions. But he particularly picked those two, and one of the reasons was because they do exemplify East and West, a true religion. And as Shivani was making reference to that, the question that came to my mind is, what is a true religion? And there are two distinguishing qualities to a true religion, as these are the ones defined by Swamiji from through Master, Master through Swamiji. And he said the first is, a true religion is one that has its origin in a God-realized master. Now, not all religions, world religions, have that, or that the teachings have come down through a God-realized master. The second one is that they embody the principle, again mentioned by Shivani, of God communion. And Swami added to that, ultimately with the goal of moksha, of the soul. And you can see this is represented by the Eastern tradition of the Bhagavad Gita, of Lord Krishna. But it's also in the original teachings of Christ in the Bible, in the Western tradition too. But unfortunately, that element of God communion has somewhat been lost. And Shivani narrates that story of how Jesus Christ came to Babaji to let us light that light on the high altar once again, to bring communion, oneness with God, the individual soul, making love to God in communion, that needed to be revived in the Western tradition, because in the early days of the Christian church, that was part, and that was definitely part of Jesus Christ's message, communion with the highest. Now we know, of course, bringing together the East and West in the Eastern world here in India. India's long been held, for millennia, it's been held as the cradle of spirituality, the cradle of where religion, you could say, has been expressed for thousands of years by the great masters that have come and propagated the Dharma one after the other. And from India, religious and spiritual teachings have gone out into the world. So there's no question about that. But in the West, Christ too came into a very religious and spiritually true tradition. Moses was a great soul. Moses was a God-realized master. And so the tradition of the Mosaic law passing down through the Jewish people, that too is a true religion. But true religion, outwardly expressed in various traditions, need new expressions from time to time. And it's been in India, I think you've seen over the years, new expressions have come again and again as time has passed. Great saints have come, been recognized, been accepted, and have expressed the ancient traditions again and again and again. And so you find in India this wonderful spectrum and a plethora of traditions. In the West, that was not so. And Christ came into that Mosaic tradition to bring a new expression, but unfortunately it was not accepted by the Jewish people themselves. But it was like a spark. When the time is right, in history, in the descent of religion, and in perhaps even in scientific tradition, when the time is right, an idea creates a spark. And that spark that Christ brought was like a fire in dry grass, and it caught fire and it spread throughout the Mediterranean, and it changed the world, historically changed the world, because the spark was there and it was receptive. And we must remember that he was an avatar. He came with a specific message. Just as the masters of our own path have now in this age brought a new expression to these ancient teachings, they too came into this world as avatars to reignite and to reveal those ancient traditions once again and to show the unity between East and West. This, as it says in this writing of Master, is the divine plan. Now, I find that very inspiring. The thought that there is a plan. When I grew up as a boy, I was not particularly religious at all. And of the scientific bent, you might say the Western scientific tradition, a divine plan, isn't it just a bit of random? Or we make our own future by what we do by individually? I mean, I think this is the common approach. But the idea that there is a plan, when I came to accept that, I found it to be greatly comforting. That it's not, because we find ourselves in the midst of turmoil. This world seems very chaotic. The violence and the economic uncertainties that we find. And if you realize there's something behind it that is moving in a certain direction, and it says in the autobiography of the yogi that Babaji is guiding the spiritual unfoldment and evolution of spirituality in this age. And for me, that was a very comforting message when I came to the autobiography, that there is a plan and it's work and it's moving in a specific direction, and that the great ones are guiding that. And they have chosen these great masters in this age, in the 19th, early 20th century, to incarnate and to reveal that plan and to put into motion those forces that are going to change this world and set the foundation of spirituality in the centuries and the millennia to come. We are at a time of great opportunity spiritually. We don't tend to think that way. Is it not just like every other century? Well, yes, it is in its own way, because you could say every time is an opportunity. There's an opportunity in every century, in any year. But this is a special time. And our master, Paramahansa Yogananda, said it's the time when that window is a little bit more open, when the blessings are a little bit more accessible. And for those who seize that opportunity, great spiritual progress can be made, because we're just a generation removed from the passing of this great avatar of our Guru. But not only his passing, he was one of a line of gurus. And so I urge all of us to take advantage of this moment that we have right now. And we're going to see in this ages to come this consolidation, you could call it, of the efficiency of the West and the spiritual efficiency of the East. But the spiritual efficiency comes first. And that is what the masters brought. Our line of masters is to bring that spiritual efficiency and awaken it. Awaken it in America, yes, he went to America, but it needs to be awakened also here in India. India has been blessed. It's the land it's the guru of the world, as the way Swamiji would say it, because of its tradition. But we cannot rest upon the laurels of the past alone. We have to be active participants to carry that forward. And you could say India is facing a challenge to live up to the greatness of its legacy. And it's a duty, and it's a responsibility for devotees here in this country to hold that high ideal and to let it shine through India and be the real guru of the world, which is what Master predicted, what the great ones predict for the future. Master came with that message, but remember, let's keep it in mind, Master was an avatar. He said himself that he had come many times. He had incarnated. This was not the first time he had incarnated a great soul like that. He said, yes, he had come as a ruler. He had come as a warrior. He had come as a poet. That was interesting. I wonder whom he might have been as the poet. He came, as he said many times, he came as a hermit. And he'll come again and again. And as he says in his poem, God's Boatman, 1,000,000,000 times if necessary, if there's one, so long as there's one stray brother left by the wayside, he'll come to help redeem. And that is his mission. He holds that special place in the lineage or in the history of spirituality, of avatars. And so he came just less than a century ago. So let us, and this is the message I invoke for all of us, let us be representatives of not of him, but also of this great tradition of this land of India, which is our responsibility. Now, I'm a Westerner, but in a sense, I'm an Indian at heart. And all of us, I think, live up to that and be representatives and be exemplary disciples of this great master. And we'll find that that window that is open for us to pass through in this time, the blessings will be there for us. A new dispensation has come. A new opportunity has come. And it's there for those who receive. To all those who received him, gave he the power to become the sons of God. And that's our opportunity. That's the opportunity presented by any of the great masters to each of us. So God bless all of you. And